Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There are several people around the world, some and very few within the Shias, and many amongst the non-Shias, especially the Wahhabis, who claim that crying for Imam Hussain alayhi salam is a bid'ah, and they claim that it is shirk, and that we should not cry for someone who has passed away and is dead, as they claim. The matter about whether Imam Hussain is dead and whether the martyrs and the shuhada are dead or alive is a separate matter that we will discuss in a separate clip. But what I want to discuss right now is an event that took place even before the birth of Imam Hussain, and it took place before the event of Karbala. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, in his Musnad, narrates from Imam Ali bin Abi Talib that he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he saw the Prophet was in a grieving state, and he was very sad. So Imam Ali asked him that, what is the problem? Has someone angered him? So the Prophet narrates to Imam Ali that Jibraeel had come to him and explained to him and narrated to him the event of Karbala. So when Imam Ali saw tears in the eyes of the Prophet and asked him about what had happened, and the Prophet told him about the event that Jibraeel had narrated to him, the Prophet himself had tears in his eyes. And one important part from this narration is that Jibraeel offered to bring to the Prophet the sand of Karbala so that he could smell the sand. And the Prophet asked for Jibraeel to bring the sand, and the Prophet began weeping for Imam Hussain. So there are two things that we learn from this. One is that the Prophet, the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent for us as an example, he himself has wept for Imam Hussain, even before the event of Karbala. The event of Karbala took place several years after this event that we are talking about, that has been narrated by Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal in his book Musnad. The reference for this hadith will be on your screen right now, and we see that weeping, if it was shirk, weeping for someone, if it was not allowed in Islam, then the Prophet himself would not have wept for Imam Hussain. The second thing that we learn from this is that the Prophet, who Imam Hussain was his grandson, Imam Hussain was one of his successors after Imam Ali and Imam Hassan. Imam Hussain was the successor of the Holy Prophet. The Prophet has said that Hussain is from me and I am from Hussain. The Prophet is Rahmatun lil Alameen. The Prophet has more compassion for everyone, let alone the Imam of the third Imam of the Shias, let alone the compassion that the Prophet has for his own grandson. He has compassion for the whole Muslim Ummah. So when the Prophet asked for Jibraeel to bring the sand so that he could relate to the event and he could smell the sand of Karbala, and then because this narration that we're talking about took place before Karbala, so of course the Prophet had to then imagine the personality of Imam Hussain, and then imagine the events that would take place in Karbala, and then weep for Imam Hussain and grieve for Imam Hussain. So then what about us, who now after 1400 years we have not interacted with Imam Hussain and we have not seen what took place in Karbala? Of course we would need signs and rituals so that we could then relate to the tragedy that took place in Karbala, so that we could relate to the tragedies that befell on Imam Hussain and his companions and his family, and the tragedies that happened after Karbala, in Karbala itself and in Kufa and in Sham, so that we can then grieve for Imam Hussain, and then we can keep alive his memory and move forward his movement. So from this hadith we learn two things, that one, not only is weeping for Imam Hussain, and not only is Azadari not shirk and not a problem in the eyes of Islam, the Prophet himself was one of the first people to weep for Imam Hussain. But the second thing that we learn is some of the rituals and symbols and the things that we use to connect ourselves to the tragedy of Karbala. That itself is a tradition that has been started by the Prophet when he asked for Jibraeel to bring the sand. So this is in the series of videos that we are going to be putting out in these 10 days. This is one of the first hadith that I want all of us to discuss and think about, because this itself proves many of the things that the Wahhabis bring forward about Azadari being shirk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.